Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Hannah Sandmeyer, and I'm the founder of Up and Over Advisors. And really appreciate you taking some time out of your afternoon to join us. Certainly, we feel if you're a business owner or someone who cares deeply about the local economy in Detroit and the surrounding areas, and frankly, the local economy across the United States, we think that there's no more important conversation to have than the one that we're about to have. And we're so honored to have you with us. I know you got a lot going on throughout your day, so I really appreciate that you chose to attend this webinar. Um, just a few housekeeping items. Yes, this is being recorded. Yes, we will absolutely send it out to you. So if you need to jump off early or you want access to the slides, no problem. We can send those to you. And then as you have questions, please do add them to the chat. Oh, are you guys still hearing? Sorry, if someone in the chat can just let me know if you're still hearing the music. Okay, sorry. We're good. Okay, sorry. Okay, great. So you are with me. Awesome. Okay. But anyway, I know you have choices that you can make. Super glad that you're with us today, and I'll try to keep you this call within the 30 minutes as we promised, so we can send you back out to your day. But yeah, as you have questions, throw them in the chat. And my colleague Elena, who's on this webinar as well, she'll collect those and organize for us at the end of the presentation. Okay, so again, my name is Hannah, and I'm the founder of a family of companies. At Up and Over Advisors, we work with buyers designing acquisition strategies focused on the long-term health of the business, not just short-term outcomes. And Ethical Exits is our monthly podcast where we discuss everything M&A for mission-driven companies. And the goal of that podcast is to make this opaque world of mergers and acquisitions less gated, less jargon heavy, and more accessible by sharing real stories of people using ownership transitions as a force for good in their communities. And lastly, we just launched Steward Market, a values first marketplace for ethical business transactions. It helps sellers, buyers, and trusted advisors find each other earlier in the process with more context around what really matters to folks beyond price, beyond that multiple, including legacy, employees, mission, long-term ownership, and long-term stewardship. And just to say quickly, before we launched this firm, I've worked in high volume M&A environments and saw firsthand how differently transitions can unfold, depending on principally two things: structure and incentives. And what became clear to me is frankly that ownership transitions are not financial events. We treat them like financial events. Oftentimes they show up in the news as financial events, but they are human events. And in a city like Detroit, where businesses are deeply rooted in neighborhoods and families, how those transitions happen absolutely matters. So that's why we're hosting this conversation, not just to push one path, but just to widen the lens and have a bigger conversation with the folks who are making these decisions. So I just want to frame this quickly before we get into it. This is an overview of your options and a plain spoken look at the trade-offs. So what the session is and what it isn't, it will not be a valuation promise or pressure to sell, and it's certainly not a funnel disguised as education. So we're not trying to sell you anything. We're just really trying to have an open conversation with you about what your options are if you're thinking about, or you may need to sell your business in the next, 3-5 years, or maybe even in the next year. If you leave today with better questions, that's what I consider a win. This is just a conversation, exploration, not to push any one objective. And the fact of the matter is that we are in the midst of the largest ownership transition wave that we've ever seen in a generation. Across the United States, 6 million businesses are expected to change hands in the next decade. And most of those are owned by founders who are over the age of 55, founders or both owners. Maybe it's the second generation of owners. And this is happening whether we plan for it or not. Simply, people cannot continue to operate their businesses forever. They need to do something with them. So the real question is whether you approach it intentionally or reactively. And we're really trying to help you approach it with a better sense of what your options are, so you're not left with limited options at a later time. So, why are we talking specifically about Detroit? Well, Detroit is built differently, and Detroit businesses are absolutely not disposable. 99.6% of all small business operations across Detroit and the wider Detroit area are small, and they provide 47.9% of all jobs in Detroit. Now, what do we define as small? There's a couple of different definitions, but I think most commonly what we're talking about are businesses with 2 million in top line revenue or less. And half of those owners, half of those businesses are owned by owners age 55 plus. That's almost 42,000 companies across Detroit, employing over half a million employees and generating 115 billion dollars in revenue. So that is a ton of economic capital. That is a ton of jobs that are flowing through these businesses. And you have deep ties to employees in the neighborhoods, the owners who own these businesses. We acutely understand that. Owners who have stayed when it was been hard, and ownership transitions in Detroit will absolutely ripple outward. They can have This transition can have devastating effects on Detroit, or it can have a really positive renewal effect on Detroit. So, how it happens absolutely matters. And the reality is, historically, unfortunately, we do not have good infrastructure for business transitions, especially those in the lower or middle market that we're discussing today. 2 out of 10 of those businesses actually sell historically. But most owners don't fail to exit. They just run out of good options, or they don't know what the good options are. So often we see, because this is an emotional process. I don't want to belittle that as well. This is hard. You built your business. It's really part of who you are. Transitioning it is scary. So owners often will wait too long, or where there's no clear path to the right buyer. Again, that emotional weight of letting go is really, really significant. The process also just feels opaque and intimidating. This is not what is taught in business schools. If you're lucky to have an MBA like my colleague Elena is, this is not something that's discussed. We talk a lot about how to build and scale a business. There's a lot of resources around that part of operating a business, but selling your business, there's not a lot of resources. Valuation expectations tend to, as owners think about what their business is worth, they tie it to past performance. And that, when you're in a sales process, the buyer is buying future performance. So that can really lead to some misunderstandings or maybe some misalignment. And also that a lot of founders or owners are just not prepared financially or operationally to sell their business. So it's usually not just one dramatic event. A lot of it is this combination of things that causes a lot of friction, and it results in 80% of businesses simply closing their doors. And there's no good single definition of what a good exit is. We talk a lot about an ethical exit. I can certainly explain more about what we think about that. But there's no really good definition or single definition of what a good exit is or what that might be for you. Some will optimize for speed. A lot will optimize for price, that top dollar amount that you secure in the sale. Some will optimize for stewardship and continuity and community. Each path has their trade offs. The key, and what I really want to stress for you today, is just being honest with yourself about which lens you're using, and that will help you pursue the path in order to get that outcome. So, this is the part that doesn't show up a lot in the headlines. After the documents are signed, who keeps their jobs? Who makes decisions? Does the culture shift? What is your culture? How do you maintain your culture through the sale? And does the business stay rooted here in Detroit? The purchase agreement is day one, but the consequences of these transactions are long term. And you've built more than a business. You built something that people rely on. Employees rely on stability, certainly. Customers trust the consistency that they've experienced from your leadership and for your company over the years, perhaps decades. And your name is tied to this. Detroit is a city of community. We acutely understand that. If you have a bad transaction or a transaction that leads to a lot of folks being laid off, that can lead to some uncomfortable visits to the grocery store. This is real. And years of your judgment has been baked into the operation. That's why these transitions feel especially heavy because it's not just an asset, it's an identity. It's something that's core to who you are. So letting that go is as I shared, it's not a financial transaction. This is like giving your baby up for adoption. It's heavy. Who do you choose? What happens to them next? I've often heard it also described as, selling your family home. This is second to that. It has that kind of emotional draw to the experience of what you're going through. And we certainly honor that. So there are many pathways. There are more pathways than most people realize. I think there's a lot of chatter about private equity. Private equity, of course, is a very voracious buyer. And by that, I mean that a lot of private equity firms do not only hundreds of transactions a year, but perhaps even thousands. They move a lot of money through business transactions, but they're not the only options. So I want to explain each one of these to you. And again, I'm trying to use as much jargon free language as possible. But if I say something that is not immediately clear, please know that you're probably not the only one who maybe doesn't understand what I'm saying. So please do us all a favor and ask for more clarification. You might help somebody else out as well. So there's this concept of selling to an aligned strategic buyer. A strategic buyer usually means someone operating a company in your industry. So that they can often integrate you into a larger platform. They may even be who you consider a competitor today. They can be a strategic buyer. You can also explore employee ownership models. There are a lot of employee ownership models, some for bigger companies, some for medium sized companies, and some even for smaller companies. So there's lots of different options there. And we'd love to have a further conversation with you about what employee ownership could look like as a succession plan. This is, of course, if you don't have a family buyer. We think that if you can keep it in the company, that is amazing. Or if you can keep it in the family, rather, that is amazing. But second best to that, keeping it in the company is an amazing option. You can also bring in a partner and stay involved. So, more of a management buyout. You can also bring in someone internally. So, if maybe you have someone in your leadership team, or you have some folks that love the business and they'd like to buy it from you, that can certainly be an option. Maybe even on a more gradual basis. You can sell to a financial buyer, and a financial buyer usually means an investment group. So they're buying for a return on capital. Oftentimes, this buyer can have the highest multiple. Oftentimes, that buyer that can have the highest multiple is a strategic buyer. But I'll just say this quickly: I caution you to think a little bit deeper about those buyers that are coming in with the highest multiples, because of course they have to make money on that investment, so that the cuts that they make might surprise you and they might go deeper than what you imagine. So asking really good questions there with someone who's coming in with maybe the best price. How do they get the return on investment? And then there might be folks again in your uh, that might allow you to keep your leadership in place, or they may integrate differently depending on their strategy. So selling to also an independent buyer is also viable. Sometimes this is called an ETA buyer. You might hear that frequently, or maybe you're starting to hear that a little bit. It's getting more and more popular. ETA is entrepreneurship through acquisition. So, this is often an individual operator looking to step into ownership and run one business long term. And they're typically buying, again, one company and operate, not building a portfolio. And this may be someone in Detroit. We're working for, I think we have a cohort that we're working for with our one of our current relationships, New Majority Capital, that has about 19 active independent buyers in Detroit who are actively seeking to buy a business in Detroit with the intention to keep it in Detroit and to maintain largely what you've built. Um, the point here isn't that there's one option that's the best. The point is that you do have options, and we want to make that clear for you so you can explore those based on what you're looking for. So, what does stewardship mean? Stewardship is not about labels, it's about outcomes. So, when we think about stewardship oriented transactions or ethical exits, we're thinking about the long term health of the business and a thoughtful ownership handoff that has respect for employees and customers. And that is given time for the transition, not just a fast financial transaction. So stewardship means what largely what happens next, and how will this business continue to operate largely as it has, but maybe with some future net new opportunity that new ownership will bring in, and obviously also the capital that they can bring into the business. So, what stewardship is not, this doesn't mean that you're giving your business away. I think there's a lot of misnomers about, well, if I do the right thing for my company, I'm not going to get the best price for my company, or I'm not going to have get paid what I have earned based on what I've built. That is definitely not the case. It is not all, it doesn't have to be binary, and often it's not. Sometimes actually the best long-term financial outcomes come from selling the business to your employees. We'd love to chat with you about that further if that is of interest. But certainly, stewardship is not about ignoring fair market value. It is not a charity, and it's not one size fits all. You can care about price and you can care about people and legacy at the same time. This is probably the most important message that I would want anyone to get from listening to this presentation. This is not a binary conversation. You can do what's in your heart. You can find a buyer or an exit that helps you sleep at night and also secure the financial value that you're looking for, and that you have rightfully earned through building your business. So, price is often the headline, structure of the deal is the story. So, purchase price is, again, what we talk about. That's what's in the headlines, that's what's in the newspapers. But the structure is actually what determines the live reality. So, there are a couple different ways to structure a deal that we just want to talk about very, very quickly, and give you just a baseline understanding. So, earnouts tie part of your payment to future performance of the business. And that can be structured in where maybe you don't get the full purchase price of the business up front, but there's additional payments that are tied to future performance that you and the buyer will negotiate on. For example, you might receive additional payments if the business hits certain revenue or profit targets over the next few years, and that can shift some of the risk forward. That's not always a bad thing. That can also be a good thing when you're sharing risk, because the future is of largely uncertain with that buyer. Seller financing means that you receive part of the purchase price over time instead of all at closing. So you're essentially lending the buyer part of the money for that deal. And both of these things can dramatically expand your buyer pool, but it also keeps you financially tied to the business for a period. So being well aware of that, understanding that is important. Decision making protections like board seats, veto rights, or major changes or agreements about keeping the company local for a long time, or for a period of time. And then there's retention agreements. Two offers with the same number can produce completely different futures. So that's why the terms certainly matter. And we encourage you to certainly hire advisory or attorneys who are more aligned with what you care about, at the end of the day, what you want those results to look at, who can help you think through deal structure, so you can get what you want in the end beyond just the purchase price for your company. So, when should you start thinking about this? Well, frankly, earlier than you think. Ideally, 2 to 5 years before transition. And clean financials will absolutely matter. A leadership bench absolutely matters. Reducing founder dependency is something that the new owner will really look for. Are they stepping into a strong business, or are they stepping into a business that's dependent on you? Also, understanding where the revenue is concentrated, and are your financials clean and predictable. Clarity really reduces pressure, and pressure is what creates outcomes owners later regret. And it can stall a deal, or it can kill a deal if there's not a lot of clarity around your business financials or how your business is operating. So, four simple questions that we encourage you to ask yourself are these: if I stepped away in 24 months, what breaks? Have you done that? Have you taken a vacation most recently where you really did not answer any phone calls? Um, Also, what matters more, price, people, or preservation of what you built? That's certainly something to wrestle with and spend a little time with. And who will I trust to carry this forward? Is that a certain type of buyer? Am I leaning more towards one outcome or over another? Who do I believe can actually deliver that outcome? And will I be found, or will I seek buyers myself? That's something to certainly consider, because you can do both. And both of those options are available to you. And certainly it can really help to, again, widen your buyer pool if you're a little bit more proactive rather than being reactive to who shows up on your doorstep. So, if you're curious about your options, and you want to talk about this further, we try to do this event once a month. We think it's really important. And we love speaking and working with folks in Detroit. So, we host these kind of educational conversations for owners. We also connect people with aligned buyers and advisors. So, if you have questions about who might be able to help you through this process, or who might be the best advisors for you, happy to answer those questions. And of course, we're happy to answer any questions that you might have privately as well. We will be in Detroit. Our next live event, we had a couple live events at the end of April. We've been invited by the mayor's office and the Detroit Economic Growth Corporation to attend the Small Business Growth Summit next month on June 15th. We'll be there, and the presentation that we're hosting will be an hour-long presentation, is about a deeper conversation about planning for your eventual business transition, regardless of where you are in this process, if you're close or if you're near, or if you just want to be building with this in mind, and building to keep businesses, wealth, jobs, and legacy in Detroit is the angle that we're taking there. So if you're planning to attend that event, I think it's only $25 to attend. Should be really great. We're really looking forward to it, and I would love to meet you there. And with that, we have a couple more minutes for questions. I've posted Elena and I's our contact information there. I'll also turn on my camera if I can. Um, there we go. So you can see I'm a real live person, and happy to take any questions. Elena, did you gather some questions in the chat? Oh, let me see.
Mean? And what should I be doing right now to make sure my business is more ready, even if I'm not preparing to sell it for 5 years?
Sorry, Lynn. I think I turned you on right when you're like mid sentence there. So can you say that one more time?
Yes, yeah, of course. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. So what does clean financials actually mean? And what should I be doing right now to make my business more ready, even if I'm not planning to sell it for 5 years?
Yeah, great question. Really valuable question. So thank you for asking this. So clean financials means someone out. What it really boils down to is that someone outside of your business can understand how the company makes money, where the money goes, and what earnings are repeatable. That's a big one, right? Like, what kind of earnings, what portion of your revenue can they reasonably expect will continue? Because remember, a buyer is not buying the past, they're buying the future of your business. So for an owner, that usually means keeping your bookkeeping current, So, like at least on a monthly basis. I know that's a struggle sometimes, but doing that, making sure that those the books are current. Your revenue and expenses are categorized consistently, which can also be a challenge. But try to clean that up so things aren't categorized inconsistently throughout months or years. And your personal expenses are separated from business expenses. That's a huge one. And if you do have customer concentration, that's understandable, but making sure that that's clear. So, what percentage of business revenue, whether project based or reoccurring revenue, comes from a portion, a certain customer concentration in your business? Payroll, debt, taxes, and other major obligations are also clearly visible. So it's things like that, where you don't have to be perfect 5 years out, but you want to avoid this painful version where the buyer says, "Hey, I really like your business, but I don't understand the numbers and I don't understand what happens next when you step out." So clarity certainly builds trust, and that trust will protect your options in a sale.
Great. We got another one that I think is going to be a really helpful follow up to this
Mm,
as well. Is, when you sell a business, you need to know what it's worth. So, how do you
mhm.
start to understand what my business is worth?
Yeah, starting with the numbers is helpful, of course, but don't stop there. Most small businesses are valued based on some version of earnings or cash flow, right? But value is also going to be shaped by risk. And we're headed into weird times, or we are in weird times with AI, with the war, with uncertainty around inflation, with what's going on with the Fed. I mean, we can go on and on and on. So it is hard. It's hard to predict the future always. I think it's even tougher to predict the future for maybe many of your businesses today. But a buyer will look at things like revenue trends, customer concentration, margins, recurring revenue, those things I mentioned before, but also team strength and owner dependency and the overall industry outlook to get an understanding of how financeable the deal is. So, simple first step to ask, I think, of yourself and of the business, and maybe of your advisors in the business, is what does this business reliably earn? Right? Like, all things considered, some variables, big and small, accounted for. What does it reliably earn, and how much of that depends on me? I know that as a founder, you might be the best salesperson in your business. And that's been true for 20, 30 years. That needs to be something that you confront and maybe solve for ahead. 5 years out will give you plenty of time to do that, to maybe advance or offer more training for some trusted lieutenants in your business. Um, but also, thirdly, I would say, what would it make a buyer feel confident that the health of my business will continue? So, valuation is not just about numbers, it's a story. You're selling here. You are selling a story about risk, trust, and future earnings.
Great. Do we have time for one more question?
I think so. We got 2 more minutes here.
Okay, great. And you started talking about this a little bit about how of making sure that you as an owner um, is not the major part of the brand when you're
Mm.
looking to sell. But can you talk a little bit more? Like, are some businesses easier or harder to transition than others? Maybe some helpful things to think about if you are an owner and um, you are looking to take steps to transition and step away from your business to make sure it's set up for success.
Yeah, and this is hard, right? It's another really good question. So great questions today, everybody. Thank you so much for contributing these, and Lena, thank you so much for managing this process for us. So the fact of the matter is, yes, some businesses are usually easier to transition when the value again doesn't just it lives in the business, not just the owner. So oftentimes that means customers trust the company, not just the founder. Like you have good brand reputation. The employees know how decisions get made is another huge one, right? Could they do this on their own? If you got sick, heaven forbid, would the company continue or would things start to fall apart? Do your employees really have that roadmap? So they don't know just the what, but they know the why behind how decisions are made. And then again, that revenue is not overly dependent on one relationship. A lot of things can change, of course. So if there's a lot of revenue, anything kind of north of 30%, might cause a lot of questions, again, depending on the size of your business or the nature of your business. But the owner is not cannot be the only person who can sell, manage, or troubleshoot or hold key knowledge. So really be thinking about how you're opening up those lines of communication, that you're sharing more information, that you're empowering more people in your business. Because when an owner is a big part of the brand, and I know a lot of businesses in Detroit and certainly across the country, the brand is the owner. Your name is like legitimately on the business. That can make it a little bit tougher to transition. But that said, the goal is not to erase you at all. You're an important part of that story. And again, you're telling a story. But the goal is to make sure that the business can keep standing when you step back. So there's a lot of different ways to evaluate that, a lot of ways to play with that. But I hope that gives you at least a little bit of information or a pathway or questions to explore if that may be the case for you. Awesome. Well, with that, I think we're a minute over, so I promised not to do that, and I apologize. I already did. But looking forward to any follow-up conversations. Please do message myself or Elena. We're happy to meet with you, and hopefully we'll see you in Detroit next month. Thanks so much for joining us.